The Vorax detection fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol system. Cloaking fields engage. 6 sleek, obsidian vessels arranged in perfect hunting formation, their hulls adorned with trophies, remnants from 17 conquered worlds. Admiral Krazov studied the holographic projection of the third planet with compound eyes that had witnessed countless subjugations. Primitive electromagnetic emissions, pre-spaceflight civilization, standard assessment protocol, he commanded, mandibles clicking with boredom. The Vorax had conquered the galactic rim through evolutionary superiority. Their species had evolved on Vor Prime, a world of perpetual twilight where their ancestors had risen to domination through unmatched predatory adaptations, reactive camouflage skin, retractable bone blades, and neurochemistry optimized for the hunt. Their civilization had advanced not through cooperation but competition. Their technology developed to extend their hunting grounds beyond their homeworld. Science Officer Mevlak's analysis arrived within hours. Bipedal omnivores. Admiral. Limited natural defenses. No claws, minimal fangs, thin skin. They appear to compensate with crude tools and pack behavior. Their settlements follow water sources, suggesting poor adaptation to resource scarcity. Admiral Krazov's inner eyelids flicked with dismissal. Another soft species. The galaxy was full of them, herbivores and omnivores that had never faced true evolutionary pressure, species that relied on numbers rather than strength, on tools rather than natural weapons. Such creatures inevitably surrendered after the first demonstration of Vorax might. Deploy stealth observation drones. Standard infiltration pattern. For 3 cycles, the Vorax studied Earth. Their drones recorded human activities, analyzed military capabilities, and cataloged resources worth harvesting. The data confirmed their initial assessment: technologically underdeveloped, politically fragmented, militarily insignificant. The Vorax High Command, upon receiving Admiral Krazov's report, authorized a standard conquest protocol. A single invasion fleet would suffice. What the Vorax failed to understand, what their evolutionary arrogance prevented them from seeing, was the unique path that had led to humanity's dominance on Earth. Unlike the Vorax, who had evolved as apex predators from the start, humans had begun as prey. For millions of years, human ancestors had been hunted by faster, stronger predators. Their intelligence had emerged not as a luxury, but as a necessity, their social bonds forged in the crucible of survival. The Vorax saw only the human present, soft-skinned creatures dependent on tools. They did not see the human past, persistence hunters who had pursued prey until exhaustion, whose bodies had evolved for endurance rather than power. They did not recognize the evolutionary miracle of the human brain, capable of turning any object into a weapon, any obstacle into an opportunity. Commander Zekthul, appointed to lead the Earth invasion, reviewed the intelligence with satisfaction. His ship, the Fang of Dominion, would lead the fleet. His name would join the honored rolls of Vorax conquerors. The humans would surrender, as all prey species did. Those who resisted would be culled. Those who submitted would serve. Invasion fleet, prepare for hyperspace jump, he ordered. Target: Sol system, third planet. Designation: Future Hunting Ground 18. As the Vorax fleet prepared its jump engines, a human radio astronomer named Dr. Ellen Chen noticed an anomalous signal reflection from the edge of the solar system. She filed it as an interesting data point requiring further study. Neither she nor any human could know that humanity's greatest test was approaching, nor that the galaxy's most feared predators were about to confront a species that defied every Vorax assumption about prey behavior. The hunters were coming, but for the first time in Vorax history, they were hunting something they fundamentally did not understand. The Vorax invasion fleet emerged above Earth without warning, 17 massive warships materializing simultaneously over major population centers. Their hulls absorbed sunlight rather than reflecting it, creating perfect black silhouettes against the blue sky. For 23 minutes, they simply hung there, a psychological tactic that had broken resistance on multiple worlds before the first shot was fired. In Beijing, New York, Moscow, New Delhi, and 13 other cities. Humans stopped and stared upward. Traffic halted. Phones emerged to capture images. News networks interrupted broadcasts. But the reaction that followed surprised the Vorax observers. There was fear, yes, but not the paralyzing terror they had anticipated. Instead, across the world, a strange response unfolded. Recognition. "It's happening," whispered a Tokyo office worker to her colleague. "Just like Independence Day." In London, a teenager grabbed his younger sister's hand. "It's like War of the Worlds," he said. "We need to get home." Humanity had rehearsed this moment for centuries through fiction. Invasion scenarios have been explored in thousands of books, films, and games. Unlike every other species the Vorax had encountered, humans had collectively imagined this day, had mentally prepared for the possibility that they were not alone in the cosmos, and that first contact might not be peaceful. Commander Zekthol, observing from the bridge of the Fang of Dominion, was puzzled by the data. They're evacuating population centers without official direction. He noted, deploying primitive defenses before any formal command structure has responded. The standard conquest protocol called for the destruction of one city as demonstration. Zekthol selected Lagos, Nigeria, population 15 million. The Fang's primary weapon charge, a sphere of plasma energy gathering at its focal point. When the beam struck, vaporizing the city center in an instant, the Vorax expected capitulation from world governments within hours. Instead, an unprecedented unified response emerged. Defense forces worldwide mobilized with shocking speed. Civilians didn't flee in blind panic, but followed evacuation procedures that seemed almost rehearsed. General Maya Rodriguez, commanding Earth's hastily assembled unified defense force, from a hardened bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, addressed military leaders on a secure global channel. "They've shown their hand," she said, her expression grave but determined. "Standard orbital bombardment pattern, consistent with attacks on planetary infrastructure. This is an extinction-level event unless we act." A Russian general frowned. "How can you know their patterns already?" Rodriguez's smile was grim. "Because we've been watching the stars for decades preparing defensive simulations, and because every military power has contingency plans for exactly this scenario." The Vorax assault craft descended through Earth's atmosphere 6 hours later, expecting to find disorganized, traumatized survivors. Instead, they encountered prepared resistance. Human military forces had abandoned conventional formations, dispersing into guerrilla configurations that the Vorax tactical algorithms couldn't predict. When the first Vorax warrior stepped onto Earth soil, raising its bone blades in anticipation of easy slaughter, it was struck simultaneously by 5 different weapon systems from 5 different positions. The Vorax had evolved to hunt, but humans had evolved to wage war against their own kind, developing weapons and tactics far deadlier than anything the invaders had anticipated. Commander Zekthol received disturbing reports from ground forces worldwide. The prey was coordinating globally despite destroyed communication infrastructure. They were targeting Vorax weak points that should have been unknown to them. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be adapting to Vorax technology and tactics in real time. "This cannot be possible," he hissed to his executive officer. "They are primitive omnivores. How are they fighting like this?" What the commander couldn't comprehend was that humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't physical, it was psychological. Humans didn't need to experience something to learn from it. They could imagine, anticipate, and prepare for threats they had never encountered. And for generations, they had been imagining this exact threat. 3 months into the invasion, the Vorax Scientific Division made a discovery that sent alarm signals throughout their command structure. Their warriors were dying not just from human weapons, but from exhaustion. Dr. Aidan Chin, a human xenobiologist working in an underground research facility beneath the ruins of Cambridge University, analyzed captured Vorax tissue samples under an electron microscope. His findings were transmitted to resistance cells worldwide. "Their muscle fibers are fundamentally different from ours," Chen explained to the assembled military advisors. Optimized for explosive power and short-duration combat, their metabolism requires a specific cycle of activity and dormancy, approximately 6 hours active, followed by 4 hours of near hibernation. General Rodriguez leaned forward. You're saying they literally have to take naps during a planetary invasion? Their evolution prioritized overwhelming force over sustained exertion, Chen replied. As apex predators, they never needed to chase prey for long. Everything on their world either fought and died quickly or submitted immediately. This revelation transformed human resistance tactics overnight. Special forces units began tracking Vorax patrols, maintaining visual contact but avoiding engagement until the aliens' biological clocks forced them into rest cycles. The hunters were being hunted, not through superior firepower, but through superior stamina. In the mountains of Switzerland, a 12-person team led by Captain Wei Liang followed a Vorax scouting party for 3 days without rest, taking stimulants in carefully measured doses while monitoring the aliens' gradually deteriorating movements. When the Vorax finally established a defensive perimeter for their rest cycle, the humans struck, eliminating 20 warriors without a single casualty. Similar scenarios played out worldwide. Human resistance fighters operated on rotating sleep schedules, maintaining constant pressure. The Vorax, biologically incapable of adapting to this strategy, found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Their evolutionary advantage had become a critical vulnerability. Commander Zekthal, reviewing casualty reports aboard the Fang of Dominion, struggled to comprehend the emerging pattern. They're circumventing our superior strength, he snarled to his science officer. Exploiting our natural cycles. How are they sustaining this? They're physically inferior in every measurable way. Science Officer Mevlak's voice betrayed uncharacteristic Vorax uncertainty. Commander, we may have misinterpreted their evolutionary history. New analysis suggests they evolved as pursuit predators on their world, capable of tracking prey for days through thermal regulation and efficient locomotion. They appear to be applying these ancestral hunting methods against us. On the savanna plains of Kenya, where human ancestors had first risen to ecological dominance through persistence hunting, a squad of Vorax warriors experienced firsthand what countless prehistoric antelopes had felt: the psychological terror of being relentlessly pursued by creatures that never seemed to tire. By the 4th month, Vorax ground forces began deploying in larger groups with overlapping rest cycles. This concentration of forces, while addressing their vulnerability to endurance tactics, created new opportunities for human resistance. Larger Vorax gatherings became targets for the increasingly effective human artillery and airstrikes. More concerning to the Vorax High Command was another uniquely human trait emerging in battlefield reports: adaptation through technology. Humans weren't simply using pre-invasion weapons, they were rapidly incorporating captured Vorax technology into new hybrid systems that exploited the aliens' weaknesses. Dr. Elena Sutherland, leading the Adaptive Technologies Division from a repurposed mining facility in Australia, coordinated the global effort. Their technology is designed for their biology, she explained to her team. Every system assumes Vorax reaction times, Vorax sensory perception, Vorax endurance limits. We don't have their strength or speed, but we can re-engineer their weapons to overcome those advantages. Commander Zekthal, watching another regional command center go dark, faced a realization no Vorax military leader had experienced in 17 conquests. They were fighting an enemy that grew stronger, not weaker, with time. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo crouched in the drainage tunnel, 5 kilometers from what had once been Nairobi. Her 12-person multinational team, Navy SEALs, British SAS, Chinese snow leopards, and Russian Spetsnaz, communicated through subvocal implants, their body heat masked by adaptive camouflage suits reverse-engineered from captured Vorax technology. Their target: a grounded Vorax command vessel that intelligence identified as containing navigational data on the entire invasion fleet. The ship's defenses remained active despite battle damage, its automated systems still lethal. "Ta formation," Okonkwo sub-vocalized. Her team responded with micro-movements. The twitch of a finger, a double blink, acknowledging the command without sound or radio signals that Vorax sensors might detect. The Vorax, despite their fearsome appearance and advanced technology, had evolved as solitary hunters who coordinated only through strict hierarchy. Their military doctrine relied on overwhelming individual prowess rather than complex group tactics. This fundamental difference gave Okonkwo's team a critical advantage. They moved through the ruins with synchronized precision, developed through generations of human warfare, covering sectors, compensating for individual weaknesses, communicating vast amounts of information through minimal signals. Each member understood not just their role but how to adapt if others fell. When Specialist Rivera took plasma fire to his leg, Sergeant Chen immediately shifted position to cover his sector, while Corporal Petrov dragged him to cover. No orders were needed, no communication beyond silent eye contact. The injured man was never left exposed, the mission never compromised. Aboard the Vorax vessel, Sub-Commander Trazkol observed the human approach through security feeds. "Primitive infiltration attempt," he reported to Commander Zekthal. "Security systems will eliminate them once they breach the outer perimeter." The 6 Vorax warriors aboard prepared individually, each selecting optimal ambush positions according to personal preference rather than coordinated strategy. As apex predators, they trusted their individual combat prowess above all else. When the humans breached the hull, they moved not as 12 individuals but as a single organism, flowing through corridors in formations that constantly adapted to the environment. They eliminated the first 3 Vorax warriors before the aliens realized their defensive positioning had been compromised. "They're coordinating beyond expected parameters," Sub-Commander Trazkol transmitted urgently. "Their movements suggest shared consciousness." Requesting. His transmission ended abruptly as Okonkwo's team converged on the command center. The surviving Vorax could not comprehend what they witnessed. Humans with critical injuries continued fighting, supported by teammates who exposed themselves to fire to protect their wounded. Individuals sacrificed tactical advantage to preserve group cohesion. Their attack patterns revealed intimate knowledge of each other's capabilities and limitations. 5 hours later, Lieutenant Okonkwo's team secured the vessel. 8 humans survived, 4 with injuries that would have incapacitated any Vorax warrior. The ship's database was intact. When the first decrypted files reached General Rodriguez's command center, they revealed something more valuable than tactical data: navigational charts marking the locations of 17 conquered worlds, many with surviving subjugated populations kept as slaves or livestock. "They've been doing this for centuries," Rodriguez murmured, studying the star charts. "Always the same pattern. Isolated conquests, one species at a time, keeping their victims separate to prevent any coordinated resistance." Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "Their evolutionary psychology makes them incapable of imagining true cooperation. They can't conceive of separate species working together against a common threat." For the first time since the invasion began, a genuine smile crossed Rodriguez's face. "Then let's show them something truly incomprehensible." Within 24 hours, Colonel Yamaguchi's Cybernetics Division had extracted the Vorax communication protocols. Within 48 hours, Earth established its first transmission to the nearest conquered world, the silicon-based Navini, enslaved for 3 generations under Vorax dominion. The message was simple: we are fighting back, and we are coming for you. Professor Kwame Nkrumah had been a linguistic anthropologist before the invasion. Now, inside a repurposed Norady bunker, he led Earth's first extraterrestrial diplomatic corps. The challenge before him was unprecedented: establishing meaningful communication with alien species humanity had never met, whose biology, psychology, and culture were entirely unknown. The Vorax communication system uses a standardized translation matrix, he explained to General Rodriguez. They imposed it on conquered species to facilitate control rather than understanding. But we can repurpose it. The first successful contact came 18 days later. The crystalline Dovan, whose silicon-based neural structures processed information at speeds that made human thought seem glacial, responded to Earth's transmission with unexpected enthusiasm. "They've been waiting," Nkrumah reported, his eyes wide with wonder. "The Dovan have maintained hidden communication networks beneath Vorax surveillance for generations. They've been monitoring Vorax transmissions about Earth since the invasion began." What unfolded in the following weeks defied all Vorax expectation. Throughout their conquest history, they had carefully isolated subjugated species, preventing any possibility of cooperation. Now, using repurposed Vorax communication technology, Earth established contact with resistance movements on 12 conquered worlds. The aquatic Marisol contributed their knowledge of Vorax ship design, critical weaknesses their scientists had discovered during generations of enslavement. The arboreal Tazi shared techniques for camouflaging communications from Vorax detection systems. The gaseous Elan offered mathematical insights that helped crack remaining Vorax encryption protocols. And in return, humanity offered something these species had never possessed: the psychology of a predator willing to fight on behalf of others. "We don't understand," transmitted the Navini representative, whose species had evolved as pure herbivores, with no concept of predation in their cultural framework. "You hunt the hunters, but you do not consume them. You risk extinction to protect others not of your kind. What evolutionary advantage does this serve?" Professor Nkrumah struggled to explain concepts like empathy and altruism to beings whose evolutionary history shared no common reference points with Earth's. "Humans evolved in complex social groups," he explained. "Our survival depended on protecting others, even at personal cost. We apply this instinct not just to our own kind, but to any beings we recognize as deserving protection." The Navini response came after a long pause. "You are predators who protect. This is unprecedented." Within 6 months, humanity established an interstellar resistance network. The conquered species, long prevented from communicating with each other, found in humans the perfect coordinators. Beings who understood both predator and prey psychology, who could think like the Vorax yet act with the collective welfare of all species in mind. Commander Zek Thul, now fighting a multi-front war against an ever-expanding resistance, faced a reality no Vorax commander had encountered in their species' history. Their carefully isolated hunting preserves were communicating, coordinating, sharing information. Slave populations were sabotaging critical systems with techniques that showed unmistakable human influence. "This defies evolutionary logic," he raged to his increasingly depleted command staff. "These herbivore species should be competing for survival resources, not cooperating across biological barriers." His science officer Mevlak, who had been studying human culture through intercepted transmissions, offered a disturbing insight. "Commander, humans possess a unique evolutionary adaptation. They can extend their social identification beyond their biological group. They can perceive themselves as part of a larger whole that includes fundamentally different organisms." "That's not adaptation," Zekfult snarled. "That's evolutionary madness." "Perhaps," Mevlak responded quietly, "but it appears to be working." Dr. Elena Alvarez had been studying Vorax neurophysiology for months. Working in an underground laboratory beneath Buenos Aires, she analyzed tissue samples from captured warriors, correlating cellular responses with environmental stimuli. What she discovered changed the course of the war. Every predator species carries the neurological imprint of their evolutionary past, she explained to the United Defense Council, including the memory of what once hunted them. The Vorax, despite their current apex status, had evolved from smaller creatures that had once been prey. Deep in their brain structure, Alvarez found neural pathways that responded to specific sensory patterns, the shadows, sounds, and smells that had signaled danger to their distant ancestors. "It's like how humans instinctively fear snakes or spiders," she continued. "These responses bypass conscious thought. They trigger immediate physiological reactions, the brain chemistry of panic. Working with audio engineers and xenobiologists, Alvarez identified specific sound frequencies that activated these primal fear responses, particular patterns of light that disrupted Vorax visual processing, electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their sensory organs. They cannot be trained to ignore these stimuli, Alvarez concluded, any more than humans can be trained not to flinch when something rushes toward their eyes. It's hardwired, preconscious, unavoidable. Meanwhile, human engineers worldwide had been systematically reverse engineering Vorax technology. What had initially seemed like incomprehensible alien science now revealed its principles through relentless analysis. Plasma weapons were recalibrated for human physiological parameters. Shield generators were modified to accommodate Earth power systems. Communication arrays were repurposed for human neurological interfaces. Commander Zek Thol, monitoring these developments from the dwindling safety of orbit, recognized the existential threat unfolding. 9 months into what should have been a standard conquest, the Vorax faced unprecedented losses. Their ground forces were being systematically eliminated, their communication networks compromised. Most disturbing of all, their superior technology was being turned against them with terrifying efficiency. "We must regroup," he announced to his fragmented command structure. "All remaining Vorax forces will withdraw to Central Command Station in the Alpha Centauri system. We will analyze these anomalies and develop appropriate countermeasures." The Vorax fleet began disengaging from Earth orbit, their retreat disguised as tactical repositioning. But the transmission was intercepted. Dr. Sutherland's cryptography team had long since broken the Vorax command codes. Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka, commanding Earth's newly commissioned Interstellar Defense Force, received the intelligence with a grim smile. During the months of ground combat, human engineers had been quietly repurposing captured Vorax vessels, understanding their propulsion systems, weapons capabilities, and navigation controls. "Prepare the assault fleet," Tanaka ordered. "Equip all ships with Alvarez devices. Every Marine boarding team will carry neurological disruptors." 200 vessels assembled in Earth orbit, a hodgepodge armada of repurposed Vorax ships, hybrid human-alien constructs, and converted orbital platforms. Their crews represented every military tradition Earth had produced, now united in common purpose. Before departure, each ship received a final upgrade: communication arrays capable of interfacing with the technology of conquered worlds. The resistance networks established by Professor Nkrumah's diplomatic corps ensured that when humanity arrived at Vorax-controlled systems, they would find allies ready to rise up. As the fleet prepared for its first faster-than-light jump, General Rodriguez addressed the assembled commanders. "For the first time in their evolutionary history, the Vorax will experience what their victims have always felt: the terror of being hunted by something they don't understand, something they cannot predict." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, bound for Alpha Centauri and the heart of Vorax command. The hunters had become the hunted. And they weren't just bringing weapons, they were bringing nightmares. The battle for Vorax Command Station began with an impossibility: the arrival of 200 ships where no enemy fleet should have existed. Commander Zek Thol, watching the sensor feeds from the station's central command chamber, felt an alien sensation creeping through his nervous system: doubt. "How have they mastered hyperspace technology in mere months?" he demanded. "It took our species 3 generations to develop functional faster-than-light travel." His executive officer had no answer. The humans had accomplished the incomprehensible once again. Admiral Tanaka's assault followed no Vorax battle doctrine. The human ships didn't form into conventional attack formations, but scattered in seemingly random patterns, creating a 3-dimensional web that confused Vorax targeting systems optimized for traditional fleet engagements. "They're using our own ships against us," Zek Thol realized, "but flying them in ways we never conceived." The Vorax defense fleet, still formidable despite Earth campaign losses, moved to intercept. Their captains engaged with the confidence of evolutionary superiority. each a perfect killing machine with reflexes and aggression honed through millions of years of predatory selection. But the human pilots had adapted. Captain Genway, flying a repurposed Vorax interceptor, demonstrated dogfighting techniques impossible by Vorax physiological standards, high-G maneuvers that would have rendered their original pilots unconscious. Major Sofia Rodriguez executed tactical jumps at distances Vorax navigators had calculated as minimally safe, exploiting human risk assessment algorithms that differed fundamentally from Vorax caution protocols. "They're inside our tactical parameters," reported the Vorax fleet commander. "Fighting in ways our strategic simulations never predicted." When the first boarding torpedoes struck the command station, they released not just human Marines but Alvarez devices, compact generators emitting precisely calibrated frequencies that triggered primal fear responses in Vorax neurophysiology. The defenders found themselves battling not just physical enemies but their own instincts, ancestral panic responses they could neither control nor understand. Captain Michael Chen led the first boarding team, his Marines advancing through the station's corridors in perfect tactical formation. They encountered Vorax warriors in disarray, their coordination shattered by the neurological disruptors. For the first time in their evolutionary history, the Vorax experienced what countless prey species had felt: the helpless terror of being hunted by a superior predator. "They're retreating deeper into the station," Chen reported, falling back to the central command hub. Inside that hub, Commander Zekthol gathered his elite guard, veterans of a dozen conquest campaigns, the most lethal warriors the Vorax species had produced. They would make their final stand here, defending the master database that contained the collected knowledge of 17 subjugations. "We fight as our ancestors fought," Zekthol declared. "We are Vorax. We are the apex. We do not surrender." But as the battle for the command center intensified, the Vorax witnessed something beyond their evolutionary comprehension. Human soldiers continuing to fight despite injuries that should have been incapacitating. A Marine with a severed arm applied a tourniquet and kept advancing. Another, impaled by a Vorax bone blade, broke off the protruding section and continued firing. "They don't stop," whispered a Vorax warrior, horror evident in his voice. "Even damaged beyond repair, they continue to function." The final assault breached the command center doors after 6 hours of relentless combat. General Rodriguez, having transferred her flag to the assault fleet, personally led the attack. When she finally stood before Commander Zekthol, separated only by meters and the wreckage of his guard, the Vorax commander saw in her eyes something he had never witnessed in any prey species: not fear, not hatred, but a calm, calculated determination. For the first time in his life, Zekthol understood what it meant to be hunted by a superior predator. And as his final warriors fell around him, he felt something no Vorax in recorded history had experienced: respect for a prey species that had become the ultimate hunter. One standard galactic year after the fall of Vorax Command Station, representatives from 23 species gathered in the newly constructed Galactic Concord Hall in Geneva. The grand chamber, designed with environmental adaptations for beings from worlds with vastly different atmospheric requirements, hummed with translator devices and the mingled sounds of communication methods that span the biological spectrum. President Lai Chen of the United Earth Government stood before the assembled delegates, her voice calm but carrying the weight of humanity's hard-won authority. "We did not leave our world seeking conquest," she began. "We were dragged into the stars by necessity, by the threat of extinction. What we found there was suffering beyond measure. 17 worlds subjugated by predators who saw all other life as merely prey." The Vorax delegation, reduced to observer status and confined to their homeworld under human supervision, watched with compound eyes that had evolved for detecting weakness, but now registered something unfamiliar: mercy. "We could have answered genocide with genocide," Chen continued. "Our weapons could have sterilized the Vorax homeworld. Our fleets could have harvested their resources as they harvested others. By their own evolutionary logic, This would have been the natural conclusion. The stronger species eliminates the weaker. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the delegates from formerly subjugated worlds. The Navini representatives' crystalline appendages vibrated with remembered grief. The gaseous elan pulsed in patterns that transmitted ancestral rage. But humans did not evolve to simply replace one predator with another, Chen said. Our greatest strength is not our capacity for violence, but our ability to choose when to set that capacity aside. The terms of the Galactic Concord were unprecedented in interstellar history. The Voraks, stripped of their empire, would be quarantined to their home system for 3 generations, during which time human educational missions would work to reshape their cultural understanding of predator-prey relationships. Their technology would be repurposed to repair the damage they had caused across multiple worlds. Their warriors would be retrained as ecological restoration specialists. Most significantly, Earth proposed a mutual defense pact, with humans serving as guardians against any species that attempted domination through force. The former victims of Vorax aggression, witnessing humanity's capacity for both terrible violence and profound compassion, accepted this arrangement with cautious optimism. We are neither the strongest nor the fastest species in this gathering, Chen concluded. We do not possess natural weapons or armor. Our homeworld is neither the harshest nor the most forgiving. But we have learned something that the Vorax, for all their evolutionary advantages, never grasped. True apex species do not need to prove their superiority through domination. Throughout the assembled delegates, a new understanding emerged. Humans hadn't merely evolved as predators who had overcome their biological limitations through technology. They had evolved beyond predation entirely, developing the capacity to choose when to hunt and when to protect. And in that choice lay a power that no purely instinctual hunter could ever match. As the Concord was ratified by species whose biologies shared no common ancestor, yet whose representatives now shared common purpose, the Vorax observer turned to his human guard. We believed ourselves to be the evolutionary endpoint, he admitted quietly. The ultimate expression of natural selection. The human peacekeeper, a veteran of the Earth campaign, considered this. Evolution doesn't have endpoints, she replied. Only adaptations that work for a time, in a particular context, and context changes. Across the chambers, representatives of former prey species stood alongside those who had once been their hunters, united by something the galaxy had never witnessed before, the protection of a predator species that had chosen to become something more.